This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. In the year 1506, the master of high Renaissance art, Leonardo da Vinci, was putting the finishing touches on what would become the most famous work of art in history, the Mona Lisa. As you might expect, the final piece of the half-length portrait of Italian noblewoman Lisa del Gioconda was the legendary, enigmatic smile. In addition to Leonardo's unmatched raw talent, he was possessed of an endlessly curious mind that would prove to be far more valuable than that prodigious natural ability. His curiosity would famously prevent him from ever taking yes for an answer. He would always need to know why. So when it came to painting the human form, Leonardo thirsted for the knowledge of how the body functioned on a physical level, how the muscles moved, where they were attached, what nerve endings caused stimuli to fire those muscles, which veins pumping blood could be discerned by the naked eye, and most importantly, the interconnectedness of virtually everything happening just beneath our skin. Leonardo, as a result, spent many nights in the morgues of Florence peeling back the skin of cadavers and sketching incredibly accurate renderings of what he saw, and ultimately, his paintings were achingly precise, often in ways that could never be appreciated. How, if a model posed in a certain position, that would cause a muscle in the neck to flex in a specific way, that would cause a slight tension in the muscles of the upper back that would lead to an imperceptible drawing back of the shoulder that would finally affect how an article of clothing might fold in a way that an observer could perhaps perceive a partially flexed biceps slightly tugging against the material of the subject's shirt. Yes, it sounds crazy because it kind of is, but that's the level of understanding of the human anatomy that allowed Leonardo to create paintings that appear to be alive, to capture the dynamic essence of a living, breathing entity. And never more so than in his creation of the mouth of Lisa del Gioconda. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to Cursed Canvas. If you take the time to go through the notebooks of Leonardo, starting with the Codex Leicester that Bill Gates bought in 1994 and published online, you'll find a truly amazing mind at work. Walter Isaacson, in his incredible biography, Leonardo da Vinci, published in 2017, spends many, many pages describing the towering genius contained in these notebooks. Everything from scribbles of poetry to incredibly precise drawings of cats sleeping, or the way water ripples in a current, to how birds fly, or terrifying weapons of war. But then he also used these notebooks for studies of paintings that he was working on, including the Mona Lisa. Near the top of one of these pages, you can see a series of sketches of the human mouth, one with the skin peeled back to reveal the various muscles that caused a face to smile. Where did those muscles connect? What was the overall effect of those muscles firing, and what muscles were involved to actually stop smiling? All of these questions were answered for the master within these sketches. And there, right there at the end of a series of doodles, we can see the familiar smile that would be immortalized in the final oil-on-walnut portrait of Lisa del Gioconda. But really, what gives with that smile? If you can do it safely, try to pull up a picture of the Mona Lisa on your phone or computer, because this is pretty amazing. Okay, look directly at the mouth of the woman in the painting. She's not really smiling, is she? But now, and this is the important part, shift your gaze to her eyes, but stay aware of her mouth in your peripheral vision. Did you see it? Try it again. Yeah, you can catch a fleeting glimpse of the woman breaking into a smile. It's uncanny and more than a little unsettling, but it's also been proven by neuroscientists, and there's an explanation. An explanation made all the more incredible by the fact that even if he didn't know why, Leonardo understood the optical and neurological phenomenon that would produce such an amazing effect. Yes, Leonardo was a student of human anatomy, including the human eye, but simply dissecting human eyeballs wouldn't really explain the difference between direct sight and peripheral vision. That's something that he must have just understood through good old-fashioned observation and experimentation. So there's a very complex explanation in Isaacson's book, but I'll just give you the cliff notes. So Isaacson wrote, "From his optic studies, Leonardo realized that light rays do not come to a single point in the eye, but instead hit the whole area of the retina. The central area of the retina, known as the fovea, is best at seeing color and small details. The area surrounding the fovea is best at picking up shadows and shadings of black and white. When we look at an object straight on, it appears sharper. When we look at it peripherally, glimpsing it out of the corner of our eye, it's a bit blurred, as if it were farther away. With this knowledge, Leonardo was able to create an uncatchable smile, one that is elusive if we are too intent on seeing it. The very fine lines at the corner of Lisa's mouth show a small downturn. If you stare directly at the mouth, your retina catches these tiny details, making her appear not to be smiling. But if you move your gaze slightly away from the mouth to look at her eyes or cheeks or some other part of the painting, you will catch sight of her mouth only peripherally. It will be a bit blurrier. The tiny delineations at the corners of the mouth become indistinct, but you'll still see the shadows there. These shadows at the edge of her mouth make her lips seem to turn upward into a subtle smile. The result is a smile that flickers brighter the less you search for it." So when you look straight at her mouth, she's not smiling, but when you look away, you can peripherally watch the smile form. So there were some that accused him, naturally, of sorcery when this effect was experienced by the more hysterical of his contemporaries, and more than a few went so far as to proclaim that the painting itself was haunted or cursed. We, of course, know that the magnificence of the piece has nothing to do with supernatural influences, but is solely the result of a unique mind, prodigious talent, and an unyielding curiosity that was driven by a work ethic that, though at times was horribly scattered, still allowed Leonardo da Vinci to become arguably the greatest artist to ever live. But the Mona Lisa isn't cursed. These next two paintings, however, very well could be. I know, that's a long introduction for an episode that's going to end up having nothing to do with either Leonardo or the Mona Lisa, but he's one of my favorite subjects to read and write about, so I hope you'll forgive me. On to this week's topic of cursed canvases. There have been many supposedly haunted paintings over the centuries, including a bunch from just the last 20 years, but the two I'll talk about today really jumped out at me while researching this subject. The American artist Bill Stoneham was born in Boston in 1947. For reasons unknown to this day, he was given up for adoption and spent much of his first year of life in an orphanage. Now, that's not to say anything nefarious was going on. 1947 was right in the middle of the so-called baby scoop era that was discussed at length in Season 3 of The Devil Within. It was a time in America after World War II when it was deemed patriotic to get married, own a home, and start a family. It was also a time of increasing conservative values that would go on to shape 1950s America. Single mothers were harshly judged, and children born out of wedlock could effectively mean the mother would be ostracized from society. So, during a time of this great societal pressure to both have a family and to not be seen as a broken woman, there was a tremendous uptick in legal adoptions. We can assume something along those lines led to Bill Stoneham becoming Bill Stoneham. His adoptive family first moved to Chicago before finally settling in Southern California. Stoneham was an artist from an early age, and after college he began painting full-time. His first gallery showing was in Beverly Hills, California in 1972, where his work debuted to mixed reviews, though his fans, including the Los Angeles Times, were very vocal, stating, quote, "The best works here deserve the attention of collectors devoted to traditional surrealism without objecting to a good many new and startling twists." So there was one particular painting that sold during that show. It was bought by an actor named John Marley. My Gen X listeners might recognize Marley as the movie producer who wakes up next to the horse's head in The Godfather, among other great roles. The painting was called The Hands Resist Him. It's an incredibly interesting canvas, with hints of Norman Rockwell when it comes to color and form, but with a darkness that you can't really avoid. The subject of the painting is a 5-year-old boy. It feels like it's summertime, he's wearing shorts and a bright blue shirt, and he's framed in a simple glass paneled door. Standing beside him, and this is where it gets weird, is a female old-school doll, nearly the size of the boy. And on the other side of the door, we can see several pairs of hands pressed against the glass. Children's hands. We know this because they never reach the height of an adult. According to the artist, the boy in the painting is actually a self-portrait, while the door represents a boundary between the waking world and the fantasy world. And the doll is his guide. So we're left with something of a surrealist's interpretation of the Dante and Virgil partnership. Over the years, events surrounding the painting would turn tragic. First, the reviewer for the Times who loved the gallery opening, Henry Seldes, would die young. Then the actor John Marley, the owner of the piece, died in 1984, and the painting disappeared. Years later, an elderly California couple discovered the painting in an old brewery and brought it home. Then, in February of the year 2000, it was listed for sale on eBay, and the story gets really weird. The couple claimed to be selling the painting because it was haunted. They claimed to have witnessed the boy and the doll fighting within the canvas in the middle of the night. The two figures in the painting would even sometimes be able to escape the confines of the canvas in the frame and roam around the house. There are also photographs that claim to show an incident that occurred within the painting where the doll was threatening the boy with a gun. It's not explained where the painted gun would have come from, but this caused the boy to again exit the canvas to save himself. The couple even set up motion cameras to capture this activity, and after 3 days of running, allegedly, their claims were confirmed. The painting was ultimately purchased for just over $1,000 by a gallery in the Midwest and was promptly put into a storage vault. Enjoying a renaissance due to the internet sensation his 30-year-old painting became, the artist, Bill Stoneham, was commissioned to paint several sequels to The Hands Resist Him, and even one prequel. Those canvases are equally beautiful and disturbing. In the late 1940s, Spanish artist Giovanni Bragolin painted a series of canvases that were meant to remind the public of the orphans left behind in the wake of World War II. The most famous of these was entitled The Crying Boy. The canvas was exactly what the title proposed, a close-up portrait of a young boy, maybe 6 years old, with big, wet tears running down his sad, anguished, and lonely face. The originals of these paintings were sold to tourists in Madrid, and once they spread across the continent, they grew in popularity. Slowly at first, but then, suddenly, they were totally in vogue in, of all places, the United Kingdom. It's been reported that more than 50,000 high-quality prints of the Crying Boy were sold in England alone. Generations of British families had these prints on their walls. They were kind of like that dish set that every family in New Jersey had because the local supermarket was giving them away for free, one at a time, as long as you bought your groceries there. Seriously, just about every house I ever had dinner in used some version of those beige ceramic plates, bowls, and coffee mugs. Same thing with the Crying Boy. Thousands and thousands of middle-class homes in the UK had one of those prints on their wall. But things got interesting in 1985 when a news report stated that a suburban home had been completely gutted by a mysterious fire and that, strangely, the only item to survive the blaze was the family's beloved print of the Crying Boy. Now, coincidentally, the brother of the homeowner who lost everything was a firefighter with almost 20 years on the job. He was interviewed for the story and made a truly incredible claim. Not only had he witnessed dozens of fires over the years, but there almost always seemed to be a print of the Crying Boy that miraculously survived. It was such a common occurrence that it was believed within the fire department that the blazes were actually caused by some curse associated with this particular painting. In the parlance of our times, the story went viral. It stayed in the news cycle for weeks. So many people had a copy of this painting hanging on their wall. What were they going to do? As a public service and a marketing bonanza, the local news station that originally ran the story calmed the panicking public by announcing that everyone in possession of one of these cursed prints should mail them to the news station and they would be publicly destroyed. Thousands of concerned citizens heeded the advice and mailed in their Crying Boy prints, thereby absolving themselves of the curse and sparing their respective homes. On Halloween night, 1985, there was a massive bonfire in the parking lot of the news station where the curse of the Crying Boy was finally put to rest forever. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You can also check out our socials at The Devil Within Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Until next time, stay safe out there. The Devil Within is a Cloud 10 Media production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. Written and produced by Brandon Morgan. Executive produced by Sim Sarna. Our post-production supervisor is Bruce Whitkin, who also provided original music for this episode. For The Devil Within, I'm your host, Brandon Morgan.